Good morning and a very warm welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Retail Tech Day by NASSCOM. And this is one of the first in our series. And it's spearheaded by 10,000 Startups and NIPP. My name is Kritika and I'm part of the NASSCOM team. I take care of the 10,000 Startup program. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And this is a topic that's been very dear to us. And we've seen a lot of traction, a lot of changes in the last year with respect to retail tech and how the whole country has reacted to the various scenarios that we've gone through. We all know that technology is pivotal to the survival and growth of the next retail revolution. By 2024, organized retail and commerce is expected to grow by 3x and unorganized retail by 40%. With technology in the forefront, the talent in the retail tech industry will also play a crucial role in the success of digitization of this industry. Talent and tech, like we know, have been the two pillars, and we will always see constant changes, and for the good, right? And to dive deep into this, and talk about the talent strategies for the new world, I'd love to, invite on stage, our virtual stage, Vidya. Vidya has 18 plus years of work experience spanning in the US and India. She's entrepreneurial with a commercial acumen in products and services business. Her experience includes a rich mix of business development, strategic planning, project management, and operational excellence in a global delivery model. Vidya has had a breadth of functional responsibilities with hands-on experience in strategy, go-to-market planning, business unit, and team development, financial planning, project and product management, and engineering strategies as well. She has built high-performing cross-functional teams and her work is spread over 3 continents. I'm delighted to invite her. And for Vidya, she's not a new face. Everybody knows her here. And she's been part of industry bodies like CII, NASSCOM, ABI, Grace Hopper, and other women leadership forums as well. And I'm delighted to invite Vidya to present the keynote today. And Vidya, will look forward to hearing from you. And I'm sure we'll have tons of questions after that. But with that, the floor is all yours.
Thanks a lot, Kritika. Good morning to everybody. I guess new world, new ways of working. So welcome to each one of you, and I hope that you all are staying safe. As Kritika rightly said, this is not something very new that we're going to talk about. Retail has been disrupted from the past few years, and the key disruption have been 2 things. One is technology, and the other one is the customer savviness, the tech savviness. So now let me share. As you know, it's not very easy for us to be interactive, and I'm not sure how engaging I'm going to be because I can't see your reaction. But I will try to keep it short, sweet, so that we can have more interaction at the very end. And I will share some stories about what we have done, and especially during pandemic also. So hopefully that will keep you folks engaged. So Tesco's technology transformation actually started around 4 years ago. And we focused on talent, hardware, and software. And what we had a reaction during COVID-19 was just a milestone on this journey. It would have been impossible for us to do what we did during the pandemic if we had not started this journey 4 years ago. If you were to look on social media, you would see Feeding the Nation trending with Tesco's name. And this was possible because of this. And one of the key things that we realized was we've been moving on this journey for quite some time, but what we were able to achieve in a few weeks it couldn't have been achieved in the 10 years that we started this journey. So the pandemic really accelerated our growth. So first example is including doubling our online capacity in just 5 weeks. Usually what happens is during Christmas, we open up 600,000 slots per week. And we have around a large army of colleagues who are working on it, preparing on it for 3 months. Here, we had to see to it that we were available online all the time for our customers. And also there were a lot of vulnerable customers, as you might know. And we had to increase our slots from 600,000 to 1.5 million slots per week. And that's the kind of scale that we are talking about. And so it's not just all about just technology or people, but it's the platform that we focused on and we started building on it. So our technology solutions go hand in hand with the incredible efforts of our colleagues. One of the things that we had to do is, because of the pandemic, many of our frontline workers, that is, who are store colleagues sitting in the stores, were affected, and we had to add additional people or additional workforce. And guess how many did we add? We added 50,000 additional drivers, pickers, store assistants, so that we could keep the nation fed during the crisis. And it's not so simple just to add. We have an ERP system, we have to pay them, we have to see to it that all the benefits and policies are included. And adding 50,000 people is not a minor feat, to say the least. And that's something which not very many people talk about, because we are so focused on technology and supply chain and this solutions that we forget there are so many other peripheral things which go on to help in the retail world. So I just read this quote from this futurist who really said it well. With fast ideas comes faster innovation. So 60% of Apple's revenue comes from products that didn't exist 4 years ago. Did you know that? I was not aware. I do know that there are a lot of technologies which has changed, new technology, the kind of work that we are doing within the past few years. But I did know that 60% of Apple's revenue comes from products that didn't exist 4 years ago. So that's the blistering pace of innovation that we are talking about. And if we are saying this is the new norm, forget about it, because this is the norm. We cannot say this is new normal, pre-COVID, post-COVID, that's gone. This is the norm in most industry as the future accelerates. Product life cycles collapses and disruption disrupts. So can I go to the next slide, please? Sorry, I'm not able to see the slide. Yes. So that's what today's topic is all about, rebalancing skills for digital retail. So let's dwell into it now. Yes, I'm sure this picture speaks 1,000 words. Just look at it. Before, can you even imagine shopping like this? And now everybody does shopping only virtually, especially I have teenager kids, and I don't think they ever want to walk into a store. Most of the shopping is done online for them. And that's what they believe is the norm for them. And especially Tesco being in the grocery side, yes, people used to go to the stores to buy it, but thanks to the pandemic, we've seen an increase of 86.5% in the few weeks where people have used online shopping. And our revenue has increased from 9% to 16%. And I'm just talking about a few weeks. So you can see how many people have adopted getting onto virtual online for shopping. And they're saying that there are 47% more people looking at adopting it. So rapid digitization, what does it mean? It means that it has huge talent implications for the retail industry. So technology advances are altering consumer preferences and behavior. And retail or any vertical or any industry that we talk about is all about customers. So how do we see to it that we give an extraordinary experience? Just note my word. It's not any experience, it's extraordinary experience. Otherwise, the lifespan of customers' loyalty has also decreased a lot. So we have no choice but to give them one seamless experience across all channels. It could be online, it could be social media, it could be stores. So that is the aim. So we've also seen that historically, digitization has been largely adapted and adopted by the e-commerce world. But now we can't say the same, because in the stores, the way it works is we have, based on the organization structure, most of the functions are built even to a certain extent. So great, thanks a lot. So what is the discussion happening in the boardroom? Everybody, I can assure you, everybody is very stressed about talent. What are we going to do about talent? And when we talk about digital transformation, people think, or it's a myth, that digital transformation is only about technology. Sorry, it's not only about technology, it's also about talent. Because if you do not have the right talent to know how to use technology, then we are in trouble. And another thing is skills, and not degrees will shape the future of the world. That is becoming more and more apparent because what we studied 10 or 15 years ago, just having a degree of computer science is not really helping. Most of the organizations at this point of time are going and hiring people from different streams and different walks of life. We've gone and hired a few liberal arts folks previously when we were, because we want to understand the whole consumer experience, and we thought with their creativity mind, they will do a great customer experience. So that's what I'm talking about. And I'm sure you must have read about what Elon Musk said. He has already said he really doesn't care about degrees. And if you notice, he has started to hire without it. So it's a new world. Can you go to the next slide, please? Great. So I'm sure you've heard all these words: reimagine, rethink, reignite yourself, reinvigorate yourself. That's very true. But just don't do it for a short time span, because that's not true. We have to keep doing it again and again. And I think the two big things that I really want to talk about is, one is the talent piece, and second is definitely about innovation in the new normal. And just give you some examples. So the workspace transformation demanded in the digital economy is much more than simply automating routine processes. It's about the collaboration between technology and talent to unleash an organization's full potential. You cannot have just one, that is technology or talent. You need to have both of them together. And if the business leaders need to be clear about that and where the real opportunities lies. This means finding people with the right skills and capabilities, or instilling the workforce with needed skills. So what did we do at Tesco? It's impossible to hire so many people from outside. One is, yes, everybody knows India has the talent, but we also know the competition is very high. So we knew that we had to do something internally also, because most of our colleagues have been in the company from the start. So we have I would say, the largest population of people who have been working from day one, or more than 5+ years or 10+ years. So they have a lot of domain knowledge. It's not just enough to have technology, but you have to understand how does the business work, so that you can apply technology and you can add value. But also it means that with newer ways of working, we need to adapt ourselves. Like, how are we going to do with data mining? This is big deal. And at present, if you look at Tesco, we do not make decisions without data. Everything is data-driven decisions. I know that Amazon, that is how they breathe. But within Tesco, we are 100+ year old company, while Amazon is 21+ years, if I'm right. So you can see that we have to really rethink, reimagine, and rechange ourselves. So what we did is we focused a lot on both e-learning platform, along with it, the classroom platform, and we added another angle to it also. I'm sorry, there's a slide going. Sorry about that. So yes. So we also, what we did is we asked our colleagues to teach our colleagues, and these are proper program in place. It's not lunch and learn sessions. but we had a few colleagues whom we had hired from outside. We said, this is one of your responsibility to become a mentor and coach, come up with a curriculum. And we had one program which was called the Step Up program, and the other one was focused on our software development managers, because that is the space where everybody is talking about. We're talking about our managers, who are the ones who face into all our colleagues at the grassroots level. Along with it, they face into the leaders, and they are the biggest evangelists. So we said we're going to focus on our software development managers, and they are the most important and critical piece in the journey. So that is one of the things that we've done. The second is, this year we've taken graduates. And usually what we do is we assign them to different teams, and we have certain programs, but it's in a very, it depends upon the engineering leader who has how he wants to run that program for the graduates. Because we usually go to good universities and we do not have any kind of boot camp, but we have certain program, very simple program in place, and then they get into the teams. But this year we decided we're going to do something very different. We have come up with a curriculum which has milestones at every 3 months, just to see where they are, how are they doing, and also it's not just a one-way communication about what the graduates are doing, but we're also taking feedback from them, because we understand what they bring to the table, the value that they bring to the table, the digitally native people that they are. We want to leverage that. And we have buddy system, and I think all organizations have this buddy system where you buddy up with somebody who's been in the organization for a long time. But what we are hoping is that we also have reverse buddy, where these people teach us how to do it. Do I have a reverse mentor? Of course, yes, I do have a reverse mentor. I'm sure the person is going to say I'm a very bad student, but that's a different thing. Secondly, about innovation and being the new normal. Let me talk about this. So now with the pandemic, the fear of contagion is leading many to abandon cash in favor of digital payments. How many of you here used to carry cash before, and how many of you have zero cash in your wallet? I can say I am one of them who's one of the transformed person. Google Pay, Paytm, PhonePe, just name it. And yes, in India, and just in the past few months that we are talking about, from the time the pandemic hit, can you believe what is the increase in digital payments? It's increased by 37%. Can you believe it? 37%. That's a huge number. Second thing is social distancing. So social distancing is prompting organizations to embrace video conferencing. Just as we can see, you and me, we are not meeting in person, but I'm doing this virtual conferencing. And it is being done at unprecedented scale. So between February 17 to June 14, Teams, that is Microsoft Teams, has grown not by 100%, not by 200%, not by 500%, but 844%. And Zoom has increased by 677%. I'm not sure what to say. Just see, the usage has gone up so high, and for all the right reasons. And would you have imagined this pre-COVID? Would you have ever said that we would be using this to such an extent as we are doing so now? So as the crisis continues, what's going to happen next? So it could accelerate the development of next-gen remote working technologies, such as augmented and virtual reality. Mostly in retail world, we know that we have adapted to it previously, but the adoption by the consumers has not been very high. But thanks to this, we've seen that the adoption has really gone very high. And these technologies will generate efficiency gains. Organizations may even retain them after post-COVID. So this process will reshape entire industries and reframe the nature of work and learning. Another part is the real estate. How many of you have gone back to the campus, to your workplace? At least I can tell you I haven't gone. And we have a huge campus. So what are we going to do with the real estate? So that's another thing that we have seen. We have put in place quite a few measures at work. In the elevators, only X number of people can go in. There's only one-way directions to walk. We have removed most of the chairs so that there is social distancing of 2 meters, the meeting rooms. So these are some of the things that we have already done, and seems like this is going to be the norm. Having said that, remote working has a lot of advantages, and thanks to the technology, we are able to do it. But we also realize the risk of isolation, loneliness, the culture within the organization. Because the key thing, if you were to talk to anybody, they will talk is about the culture. We don't remember what we really did at the previous company, but we do remember how the culture was, how our colleagues, the fun moments that we had, the memories that we have. Can we create that? And that's the balance between technology adoption and with creative approaches to maintain a sense of community and shared culture. I don't know whether, are there any questions coming up? I think we'll keep it at the very end, right? So the next is, okay, now let's talk about what are we going to do with the talent? How are we going to build this talent? Is it so simple as we are talking about? Because everybody across all industries is talking about it. And more so within retail, we are saying that this is a pandemic for us if we do not get the right talent at the right place, because we can't go at the pace that we really want to go. So technology has been changing job functions ever since the start of Industrial Revolution. But the future pace of change will outstrip that earlier transition. Automation and artificial intelligence will dramatically alter the tempo of workforce transformation. The workforce of the future will need to possess strong technical know-how for positions such as data engineers, cybersecurity, robotics, user experience. I can tell you at Tesco, we've added 4 additional job families. We never had security before. We never had data scientists, data engineers, and also the UX bit. But that's something new that we've added. Additionally, companies will have to address shortcoming in roles that call for advanced cognitive and emotional intelligence. So for jobs needing problem solving, persuasion, leadership, and management of complex relationships. I think that is another very key thing. Leadership also, the ways of working will need to change with people working in hybrid mode. You could have some people working from the office, some from home going ahead. You could have a gig economy, which is something that we're all talking about more so in the retail industry. Then how do you cater to them? What are the policies that needs to change when you have gig economy, which is always moving and in transition? How do we take care of it? How do we take care of all the cybersecurity part of it? I wish there was a set formula to say that, okay, this is the way we are going to do it. But unfortunately, I do not have a solution. But I think establishing a continuous source of homegrown talent is going to be the key. If we can achieve that rightfully, and we focus on our colleagues within the system, and we help them in getting to a certain level, I think that will be one of the biggest advantage that any company can have, a competitive advantage. Aside from the bottom line, the employee retention offers improved business continuity, preserves existing knowledge of company activities, customers, and the industry, and importantly, contributes to a strong company culture. So I think those are the key things. Sorry, Marcia, I think I forgot to tell you to go to the next slide. That's about the homegrown talent that I was just talking about. Yes. So it's about developing our own talent and how do we do it. And I think more so in the retail and the shopping world, this becomes very important. Marcia, can we go to the next slide, please? The next slide. It says sweet spot. No, just one before. Sweet spot between employee-driven and employer-driven learning. So yeah. So what we're trying to say is, if we want to focus on our homegrown talent, then one of the things that we also need to do is provide all the infrastructure for them to be successful. And which means that even the colleagues in the organization will need to change the way they work, the way they learn. So changes to learning need to be attuned with the changing times, and firms need to move away from traditional learning and development models to take a more agile, proactive, and creative approach. We have been talking about it for quite some time. Everybody knows what agile is and how we talk about agility, how change is permanent. Having said that, true changes can only happen if you have a mindset change. And it has to happen across the organization. It cannot be just few colleagues who have a changed mindset or only the leadership team, but it has to be at every section of the organization. It also has to be across business and technology. You cannot have this demarcation because many a times we notice that technology adapt mostly. They are more adaptable. They realize that change is constant because we've never seen one language for more than a few years. We know that we have to always be on top of it. So we are attuned to it while the business are the ones who have been used to certain ways of working. Retail has not changed for the longest period of time. And look what has happened in 5 years. It has been disrupted by the customers because they have become so tech savvy and customers are always important. So an organization will only be successful if we have this learning culture across every part of the business and not just within one function. So according to a recent Mercer Global Talent Trend, 42% of firms have upskilling programs. That's really a good sign because most of the organization recognizes it. And 40% are increasing access to online learning. And this is old news. I got this data, I think, last year, which means that at present from 40%, it would have increased definitely to 60 to 70% within the past few months. And 38% are deploying rapid internal skills course. So all this, what I'm trying to say is it's a step in the right direction. But in many cases, learning practices are still very prescriptive and do not foster a culture of innovation. My son is going into the engineering university, and it's still very prescriptive. I don't. I've noticed my niece and my son both are going to this engineering universities. Both are in different countries, and I've noticed in India nothing much has changed as of now. They are working on changes. They've given there are new branches. My niece has taken cybersecurity, and my son has taken computer science. And cybersecurity is brilliant, right? Can you imagine a couple of years ago having something like cybersecurity or AI or data scientists? So now they're recognizing what the corporations need, which is brilliant. And many a times, the most of the organizations are tied up with the university so that they are the ones who are coming up with the curriculum. That's also brilliant. Those are the changes that has happened in the Indian education system. But still, even now, it's very prescriptive, is what my niece was telling me, that they still tell you what to learn. The first year is pretty much same. So these are things that we really need to change. 50% of organizations were deemed as having a culture that encourages employees to stretch themselves, try new things, and operate outside of their comfort zone. See, one is the thought process of having it, which itself is very good. But there are very few companies who can really go about getting this to execution. At Desco, what we have done is we've said 70 to 30%. 30% of the time, we want to give liberty to our colleagues to try new things, but it is more relevant. It should add value to the organization in some way, because that's the best marriage between an organization and the colleague. I'm not sure how many of you have taken advantage of the time now, because the commute time that we are saving. I know we are working much more harder, I feel, because we do not get a break between meetings. But if you have gotten the time, have you managed to go onto your online platforms and try to learn different things? At least I am trying something new. I am going on to it, because the online platform that most of us subscribe to is not just catering only to the aspects of functional requirements that you need. So it's not very prescriptive. It gives you an option to try different new things. And I hope that's exactly what you're doing. And the reason why we've invested on those platforms is to ask our colleagues to be creative, to be flexible, to be innovative, because these are something which you need to do it on your own. This is not something that we can teach you, and it's not you will really need to learn. So, in contrast to traditional learning or training, employee-driven learning capitalizes on workers, that is, our colleagues' own motivations to develop, progress, and acquire new skills. So, curiosity is very, very key, and the drive for self-development needs to become a core part of the organization DNA. Along with it, it needs to become the core part of your own DNA. So, encouraging employees to develop a broader skill set can help drive problem-solving approaches, and they might not otherwise achieve in day-to-day work. So, this is very key. So, modern learning allows organizations to recommend courses they think colleagues will need, and provides also the colleagues with the freedom to pursue training that interests them. To take advantage of this, because this was not something that we had before. I don't think I ever had an option when I was working on it. So let's take a quick break, and we'll have a poll now. Can you do a poll? The next slide, please. So anyways, the question is, what percentage of CEOs are worried about the availability of key skills? So I don't know whether the poll is on. So we'll give 30 seconds. Yes, the poll is on. So we'll give 30 seconds, and can we show the results? I know I'm running out of time, so I'll try to just speak about a few key things. As the poll comes on, maybe later on we'll show you the results, and we'll see whether you got it right. So transformation and disruption, is it new? It's really not new. If you can see some of the pictures, if you can go to the next slide, please. If you can see some of the pictures, it has Nokia, Yahoo, Walmart, Facebook. So just to tell you quickly, Nokia refused Android, Yahoo refused Google. Story over. The lessons learned is take risks, embrace changes. If you refuse to change with time, there is going to be a problem. You will not be there. The second quick story that I want to talk about is Enzo Ferrari, the founder of Ferrari, insulted a tractor owner. The tractor owner founded Lamborghini. Did you know that? I didn't know that. So the story is, never underestimate anyone. Everybody and anybody, it's not just that you're the best, but there's always somebody better than you. Going to the next slide, please. I'm just talking about the trends, the retail technology trends that we are really looking at. Many of them we have already started using. You must have heard of most of it. But these are the 17 technology trends that we are looking at. So voice recognition, we believe, is going to be big. Machine learning, we already know data is already part and parcel of our life across the board, and it is going to continue to do. Robotics, quantum computing. That's a big thing that we will see, which will again disrupt and transform us. Going to the next slide. So we have noticed during COVID, the companies that have been able to cope with the pandemic are the ones who are not dependent on legacy systems. So monolithic systems, if people had not, I've noticed many of our colleagues in the enterprise side who did move to cloud, they had major problems because the colleagues were not able to work from home. They were not able to really connect. So that's the big deal. You've already heard about Industry 4.0, which is when computers were introduced in Industry 3.0. It was disruptive thanks to the addition of an entirely new technology. But now it's all about Internet of Things, connection between physical and software. So that's the next big deal that we're talking about. Going forward to the next one, what are we doing at Tesco? I know I'm getting this time check. So quickly at Tesco, we're doing more about from a data side. These are all, as I told you, we're using augmented reality, We're using data. We were the pioneers of Club Card, but what we are doing with the data, the Club Card prices, we're making use of our stores now as urban fulfillment centers. That's the post-COVID that we were able to be innovative. We had so much space. So that's a quick note. I'm so sorry. Maybe we can skip this video. If we can move to the next slide. We can skip the video. And the last one is what are the key things that you should focus on? I feel the key things you should focus on is you should give importance to technology. Technology is not going to go away. Whatever field that you're starting, whatever function that you're starting, it's very important to have technology used in certain ways. Soft skills is very important. That's something that not very many people talk about. Heavily suggest that you please work on your soft skills. We are focusing on it with our people. Multi-skilling is another thing which we believe is going to be very important. It's not just enough to be a niche in certain area, but you should be open to learn as with the changes that you can work on different things. That's what we are doing at stores, where we have a program where we asked our store colleagues to apply for an apprenticeship, where we have 10 colleagues who are now getting into coding. And that's what we believe is the next phase. Not just not focusing within technology to upskill, but looking outside technology also to see who all wants to move around. And many of our technology folks have gone into business. I think those are the key things that I would really say. I'm sorry, running out of time. Otherwise, I have so much to share about what Tesco is doing. But finally, the next slide, thank you. So think of a digital journey less as a technology project to be finished than as a state of perpetual agility, always ready to evolve for whatever customer wants next. So make yourself perpetually agile with a learning mindset. Thank you. Back to you, Kritika. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Vidya. And no, this was extremely good and very informative. Unfortunately, because we kind of started late and we kind of overrunning on time. And I'm sorry, Vidya, I had to continuously give you a time check. Really sorry about that. There are tons of questions, unfortunately, but I'm going to try and get the panel as well to answer some of these questions. But before we let you go, I just want you to take one of these questions, which is, you mentioned about internal training. How do you train your team on AI? What all does it cover? Use of the tool plus business needs. And how do you map the needs into AI for auto triggers? How do you overlap individuals' knowledge with the outputs prescribed or predicted by your AI tool? I'll just let you answer this one question and then we'll move to the panel.
I think the question only took a couple of minutes to answer, can't be a couple of minutes. What we have is, this is a very niche skill. Not everybody can really start working on AI. So what we did is we engaged with the team, and any of the things that we are working on, it has to have a measurable outcome. So we have a curriculum which talks about the measurable outcome that we really need. And you cannot take, there's some lateral hires that we have. Usually we take mostly them and we try to train them on this topic. And your question was really long. Maybe you should just ping me on LinkedIn and I can share with you what are the tools that we have used, how have we gone about doing it. We don't, it's not an overnight completion of the training, but it takes at least around 6 to 8 weeks where these colleagues are totally focused. They have case studies, etc., to go about doing it.
So, Vidya, thank you for that. And, I'd love to stay and chat on, but, technology sometimes, it's difficult. So I really, really want to thank you for this wonderful, session. And I would suggest that, we connect back and look at seeing if we can do a Twitter chat or another session on continuing on the topic. So with that, Vidya, thank you. Thank you so much. That was insightful and always, as usual, delighted to have you on the session. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bye. See you. Thanks. Have a good day.
With that, I'd like to now hand over to Sukanya. Sukanya heads the whole GCC and BPM initiative at NASSCOM, comes with some great experience across sectors, across building strategies and plans. With Sukanya, I'd love to go on, but I definitely, in view of time, need to hand this over to you. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists who are joining us. Sukanya, over to you.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you, Kritika. And thank you, Vidya. That was an amazing talk, and we really look forward to connecting with you and taking the discussion forward. Today on my panel, I have three exceptional leaders with me from some amazing organizations. We have Avantika from PepsiCo, Bhagirathi from Unilever, and Parinita from IKEA. All of them are leading the people, culture, and talent functions for their organizations, and they've seen the journey of retail. Interestingly, they've also had, all of them have had backgrounds in tech. So they bring that right combination of tech and retail that we're talking about. Can we have the panelists please on the screen? Thank you. Parinita, we'll have you probably there in a minute, but I know you're there, so we'll start the conversation while the tech team sets you up. Tech team, could you please just get Parinita on the screen as well? And I think I need to adjust myself a little bit. Is that better? No, worse. Yes. So good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very thankful. And apologies for the delay. We'll try to keep the conversations crisp and have all the key insights taken. So to begin with, what I would like to ask each one of you is how has this, the industry changed with COVID for you guys? How has it? What's a major change that has happened? Avantika, we'll start with you. Parinita, we're just having some trouble with getting your feed in. Could you just maybe switch off the video and switch back in and see how that works? Yeah. Avantika, starting with you. Tell me how the industry has changed for you.
Sure. Thank you, Sukanya. And I can talk about PepsiCo, and how COVID-19 has really impacted us and what the new normal looks like on two dimensions. One is on the employee dimension and really the ways of working dimension, which is how employees are getting impacted, as well as how how the culture of the organization is getting impacted. What are the new ways of working when we're all virtual? And the second part of it is really on the business side, what has really changed and what are some of the things that we're seeing, right? So first, I think all of us have got impacted. Everyone's working virtual, and that's not something to dwell upon too much. But in an organization that has a lot of frontline workers, both on the manufacturing side as well as on the sales side, going out every day and working, while there is a set of people who are, working remotely, there are definitely changes in ways of working that we've had to adopt, where we free up time, we look much more at how will our leaders lead virtually, during this time, because continuous meetings, etc., take their own toll, when they're happening virtually. And one very important aspect all of us are talking about, I'm sure, is about mental and physical resilience, because these times come with a very different kind of stress. None of us have ever been impacted both on the economic as well as on the personal front at the same time, where there's something happening, economically in the environment, and then there's also something happening, on the health front, where we are genuinely concerned about our loved ones, as we move on. So how do we take care of ourselves? And that's all I'm going to say about that, right? The second part, which is really around what has happened as far as us as a business is concerned. Clearly, we have seen the advantage of being a very large conglomerate or a multinational, which has multiple different kinds of products, which serve different demand needs with our consumers. Now, if you look at, certain channels where we sell, for example, in the away from home channel, which is when you go out for a movie, you go to a mall, you go to a restaurant, etc. People have stopped going out, and therefore, obviously, we've got impacted on that front, right? But then there is a balancing act because people are at home. Kids were at home during the summer break, and so there is there's a lot more consumption happening at home, and many of our products serve that need. We have products which are meant for the fun occasions when you get together and watch IPL as a family, right? And then there's also products that take care of breakfast, for instance. And many markets in the world have not had the habit of sitting at home and having breakfast. So in the US, for example, kids would go to school and have breakfast. Parents would have it on the run or reach office and have breakfast. And today everyone is consuming at home. So there is a balancing act of sorts that's happening in terms of our portfolio, where some products and some channels are doing better. And some channels and some products are obviously getting impacted. But that's the overall experience. And that really is the new normal. I think the last thing I'll touch upon is really how we buy. And a lot of us across the globe were used to going and shopping at a store. And we've started shopping online much, much more than we have shopped, at stores. And I heard the previous speaker touch upon that as well in terms of product availability online versus product availability, physically. And that's had an impact on us as well. So those are some of the areas that are, or some of the ways in which PepsiCo is getting impacted and evolving in the new normal.
Thank you, Avantika. Bhagirathi, any thoughts from your end in terms of how the business itself has got impacted?
First of all, great. Thanks for having me here. From a business perspective, if you look at Unilever, because of the wide range of brands and product lines that we have, it's somewhat similar to what Avantika said, in the sense that, your personal care products are probably not selling as much, but your, home care, hygiene, personal hygiene related products went, into overdrive. That many, with factories not even able to cope up with the demand that was coming in. Our soaps, our personal hygiene, products really had to work extra hard to make sure that we were able to meet the demands, continuous demand that was coming in. So overall, I would say on the business side, the biggest thing that changed was that we were able to adapt to the speed of change. I think that was the big thing that we saw. What earlier we thought was impossible to do, for example, demand planning used to be, months, quarters, or years, usually quarters and years, now went into a crushed mode of, even weeks. The Unilever exec met every day, because the situation was changing so frequently. Every day brought in new news and so on. So I would say adapting to that speed of change, which, in normal times would have taken maybe 5 years, 6 years. I think the whole COVID thing crushed that down and made things happen within weeks, which was, I think, really amazing.
Okay.
On the people front, I would say that there are two things that, changed very much. People realized when they're working from home that they could do a lot more, right? Talented employees did learning, did volunteering for other projects, did flex work, did even moonlighting, right? So how would we look at people and how will we cope with this expectation from them that they can do much more when they're working from home is something that we need to think about as well.
Thanks, Bhagirathi. Parinita, I'll ask you a different question because, we've touched upon multiple dimensions of it. I know tech as an industry has been, disrupted. Retail and CPG as an industry has been disrupted by tech. However, it remains to be a people-centric, right? Every person on the other end is a person buying, and then the process is also people-intensive. However, can you tell me, think about the last 4 or 5 years and tell me about a business or an activity which today is being done completely differently in your industry as compared to how it was being done, and tech being the major, disruptor in that process.
Thank you, Sukanya. And firstly, for inviting me into the panel. I must admit, I was wondering what could I possibly share on the platform of technology. But looking at how technology touches every aspect of our lives, I'm sure we'll be able to bring something of value. If I just take a moment to introduce IKEA, we are a Swedish home furnishing company. We operate retail stores in more than 30 markets in the world, and guided with our vision to create a better everyday life for the many people. I represent the retail business, so that is in India, where we run stores for our customers, and we've been here since 2012. We opened our first store in Hyderabad 2 years ago, and Mumbai is the next market that we will go in. But Just giving a little background as well, Sukanya, to what you asked. All of us are aware the world is changing really fast around us, and at IKEA we are also doing that. Right now, we are actually in the middle of the largest transformation that we've undertaken in our history. And it's not just about technology, but it's also about staying future relevant to changing customer behaviors. What we see is big global movements in terms of technology. We see digitization, urbanization, as well as environmental awareness. All of that, which is fundamentally changing the way we live every day, as well as how we are shopping. So, in adapting to our customer needs, we are seeing convenience and accessibility as something which is coming up really as key. People are shopping more online. That's one big trend. And they expect equal, if not faster and better services vis-a-vis when they meet in the physical store. So for this, I think to answer your question, when I look at the retail industry, the single most disruptive or transformative, as you may call, change that has happened from a technology perspective has been the strong emergence of online retail and omni-channel presence. So that I think we can meet our customers whenever and wherever they want.
It's interesting, Parinita, because if any of us know IKEA, we will know that the in-house store arrangement and store experience was pioneered by IKEA, right? For all our audience, you have to know that the way the stores are laid out, a Shoppers Stop or any other store in India, and the way a person works through the store, that entire design had been pioneered by IKEA. They were the first to ensure that if you enter a store, you at least go to a few sections that you didn't intend to before you step out, so that you get feel for new things. And now for you guys to have to disrupt that and compete in an online platform where your biggest strength does not exist, it must be a big challenge and something that the organization must be up to. Thanks, Parinita. Avantika, any thoughts from your end in terms of a process? Tell me a process which was done very differently 5 years back, and now it's completely, it's been completely rethought with technology.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that, we, let me word this a little differently. We've had a lot of incremental changes that have happened in technology across functions, right? But we at the heart of it remain make, move and sell organization. And a lot of that is run by human beings. So we have had a lot of enablement through various technology platforms, etc. A lot of automation that has happened where processes were manual and processes became digital. Having said that, that has really been a process that's happened over 20 years and not the last 5 years. Right? I think, again, taking up from where, you and Parinita were talking about how online has really disrupted, the market, I'd say that it's really about two things. One is how consumers have changed and the whole millennial and Gen Z buying behavior, as well as how they as well as how they like to be reached out to as consumers, which is all happening online right now. So there's this whole digital marketing space, which is brand new, and there is a whole lot of data science enabled actions that we are taking, which are relatively new versus anything else that we've done before, really fueled by what I spoke about in terms of the way consumers buy and who the new consumer really is today. And the second part of it is really the selling side, which is how do we sell online, which needs a very different set of skills and tools versus how we sold in the past, which was purely through traditional trade and through modern retail. So those are really, I'd say, two big changes that we are seeing. One quick instance I'll give you in terms of agility that we've seen post the pandemic. Now in the US, we of course have online presence through various marketplaces, right? They could be retailer online sites, they could be online sites like Amazon, etc. What we did to respond to consumer needs very quickly post the pandemic was we created our own website, which is called snacks.com, which was done completely in-house, which really helped us have a good visibility in one shot of our inventory across the whole value chain from manufacturing into the warehouses and where that was located. And put that on or enable that through a digital platform where buyers could go and buy, or shoppers could come in and shop, and we would then supply to them directly. And that's like a new, a whole new channel that we've activated in a matter of no time post the pandemic. So those are really some of the new areas in which we are focusing, which are technologically enabled, right now.
That's interesting because you've disrupted the value chain per se, right? Your entire distribution mechanism, which would have been a complete wholesale and then retail kind of a approach. Good. That's interesting. Bhagirathi, anything you spoke especially about the point that to me is very interesting is your entire demand planning, forecasting, etc. Now I know that area has got severely disrupted. Not in terms of what you do. I'm sure you still do the same forecasting, but it's about doing things faster, probably better data, more accuracy in planning. Anything else that you think the turnaround time especially has been severely impacted through technology?
I would say one other thing which has really changed quite a bit for us is around the whole customer, right? The customer or the consumer and how we sell to them. With everything becoming digital, starting from the ad space, where you buy ad space, up to the selling becoming digital, the underlying data and analytics piece and the AI piece has really helped create the whole thing as a process that is a journey, not just individual activities or processes, but a journey. So we are now starting to look at all the work that we do in terms of journeys, because improving a single process or improving a single activity only gives you, incremental changes. But if you really look at an end-to-end journey, you would see that, improving that will, speed it up, in a multiplying factor. It's an exponential change that happens. So that is what we are looking at now. And I think the customer experience journey with the underlying data and analytics that comes from it is what is really helping that. And now with COVID and everything being digital, right, you are able to check, how effective your selling is and how effective that whole product is. Now the supply chain is also digital. The customer journey is also digital. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they will both intersect really.
So you mean the transparency in all aspects of the business is now significantly enhanced?
Yeah. It will get better and better, but I think we are starting to see that happen now, right? How a product from when it was created to when it was sold, to how a person who looks at an ad or is has the inspiration and wants to buy a product to when he buys, what happens, how does it actually work, right? That whole cycle or the circle really is starting to come much more clearer now.
I'm sure Swiggy can give much more details about my binge habits than my
Of course.
Yeah. So that brings me to an interesting question. The talent dynamics in India has changed over the years, right? And most of you have been hiring for your organizations, at least for the last 7-8 years. Tell me, and there are two parts to my question. One is, what kind of skills were earlier very difficult for you to get, but today you see more and more of such experienced people that you get in the market? So basically, I want to see what was some of those niche skills which are becoming more and more mainstream today. Second, how have your ask changed? Like over the last few years, are you guys looking for skills or combinations like Vidya mentioned that, they've picked up people from the fine arts background because they want to look at, how the aesthetics of design, right? So from your, how has that skill combination changed for you? Are there things that you're looking for, which you weren't? Bhagirathi, I'll start with you also on this question.
Okay. All right. For us, I think with HUL being such a, key name in Indian markets, I don't think getting talent has ever been a problem. We've always got the best of breed in most cases. I think HUL being a long-lasting company, very aspirational, for working there. However, what I see from a people perspective and the talent perspective is that every job, not just the ones in tech, but every job is becoming more and more tech focused. Business teams, HR teams come to me and say, let's do this project in agile fashion. Let's do 2 week sprints. I'm like, okay, all right. So it's everybody's starting to talk the tech language. They're trying to understand the tech language. Becoming more fast paced. They want to do things in a much more of a startup fast fail model than ever before, and that's really the change that I'm seeing in terms of skill set that is required. However, overall, I would say that the 3 skills that we look for in anybody is timeless. And those are about being able to be creative in your thinking, ability to solve problems, and having personal resilience. I think those skills are perennial, and having those will really take you through any problem or any change that happens in the world. So I would say having a self-managed employee today, especially in these days where everybody is working from home and their supervision is absolutely impossible, that is what really counts more than anything else.
So basic first principles to begin
Yes.
with.
Yeah.
You need to have your base and your this thing ready. Agreed. Parinita, any thoughts you have on this point in terms of are you seeing skill combinations today being asked for, which were probably not something people thought about earlier?
Actually, Sukanya, the question made me smile because when I look at Bhagirathi and Avantika representing companies which are really established, rightly so in the industry. And then for IKEA, we are actually starting off our journey in the country. We actually are still establishing our brand. So every market we enter into, we actually place ourselves, to start from the very beginning, literally from scratch to establish our brand. But what we, in the bottom line, like Bhagirathi said, what we actually look for in people at the core would be people who fit our culture and have our values and who have a passion for home furnishing, if I have to really simplify it to the very core. Then, like I had mentioned, overall in IKEA, we are in the middle of our biggest transformation journey. And for us, how we see is that our customers want to meet engaged, competent, service-minded co-workers at every IKEA customer meeting point, whether it's in our stores, our big stores, we are also coming up with city stores, or whether it's online. I think that ask is completely consistent. I would not say that our talent landscape has changed dramatically, but I would say that it's become enhanced. We are transforming, and we are transforming to be more digital, connected, and innovative retailer. And sometimes it's just not about implementing a new technology. I think it's about changing the mindset on how we work. It's about adapting and adopting better ways of doing things. And when I see in the future, I think I see retail roles will have a blend of retail as well as that digital expertise, which is there. If I share 2, let's say, concrete examples from IKEA, for us as an organization, I think the movement towards this towards the new era started with introducing functions such as digital, which did not actually exist earlier for us. And I'm sure you must be aware that we've also made the recent announcement of having our center of expertise like the GBO, our Global Business Operations Setup, which is Global IKEA's in-house capability and service organization. This will also be it'll have a center in Bangalore in the near future, and this will be adding to the existing locations that we have worldwide. So the idea is that I think it's more in terms of where we are moving towards enhancement of our talent portfolio, if I may say. That is, I think, the trend which has emerged, where we are actually moving towards embracing digital technology into our everyday.
So a lot of digital, and the digital can be fluid depending on where we are looking at. I have a question, Avantika. I'll start with you on this question. Before that, do you have any thoughts, anything else that you want to add to the conversation that we were having?
Yeah, actually, I think very similar in experience that Bhagirathi and Parinita have. PepsiCo is a very big brand, an employer brand that we feel pride in, and we feel pride in offering to candidates externally, and we have had a good experience with people wanting to work with us across skill sets. I would just say that I think the big theme that has changed in terms of capabilities, which is new capability. It's not really capabilities, the existing capabilities that have been tweaked, is how do we move more from local intuition based or local database decisions to a far more big data driven approach. And I think that is transforming the way we approach many different areas. I'll give you a few examples, right? Recently, one of our senior leaders was talking about this capability we are building now on a global scale, which is on store assortment, which is what we call planogramming. How do you organize a store? Now, this is something that usually the local salesperson will work with a local planogram person to work on in different parts of the world. But there is a huge science behind this. And if we can leverage that science on a global scale and really make it so much more efficient, so much more data driven, that gives us a very different ability to target our consumers. And similarly, if we look at net revenue growth management. Now, this is something, again, that is a local capability where you look at pricing, you look at trade promotion, you look at your assortment, see how to mix and match to be able to get the right revenue growth for the organization. But if we build, again, a data-driven approach to it, which is something that we are working on. So again, it's all about advanced analytics and data science. How do we use all this in the right way to get us the right consumer-centric results for the organization?
So you're converting more of the tribal knowledge and the niche knowledge into more systems and processes and methods that can help a larger set of people. Great.
Yeah, I think just powered by data.
Great. So there's a question from the audience, and it's not specific to retail, but it's a people-centric question. And since all of you are from the background, I'll put it here. Do you see technology addressing the human bias in hiring, employee engagement, and growth? That's the question. Any of you would like to take it?
So I think there's a lot that's happening on being able to screen profiles using technology. Some of the pilots are also happening within PepsiCo. When you get a huge number of CVs, how do you get people to upload a video interview and get technology to really screen for certain aspects before you even get into a face-to-face discussion, etc. I would say it's early days. There's clearly a lot of potential, but it's really early days on some of these things. However, we've done a lot on the area of assessments. So we have really, got a very well-established talent management team globally, and it's an awarded program, for assessments which are used internally, as well as it's used for a certain level and above hiring for candidates, where we look at various aspects, including psychometric, including skills assessment, etc., to really see business acumen and to see various aspects of a fit. And some of us, again, touched upon this earlier, right? There is a cultural fit, there's a cultural DNA of the organization. How do you really marry that as you bring in new talent, especially in key roles, critical roles, senior roles, as you bring them in?
Bhagirathi, Parinita, any of you have any thoughts on this point?
Yeah, maybe I think a very short and sweet answer. I would say that we see technology as an enabler. It's not a replacer for the human competence. So it will always be something which will support, enhance, simplify, but it never replaces the human competence.
And I think, sorry, Bhagirathi, please.
No, I was just saying that while we try to create a panel that is more diverse in the way it works, I think overall and from a culture perspective, helping our interview panels understand that having diverse teams is what is necessary, and helping them understand the kind of mental makeup with which they have to come and not look for people who are similar to them. I think that is what we can do from a training perspective. But like Avantika said, a lot of technology, artificial reality, AR, VR, all of these can be used to supplement it again. But as we work in larger global teams, I think we all start to realize what value the diverse teams, bring in, and the strength that comes with it. It's a slow process, but just like anything else, whether it's AI or automation, responsible hiring, responsible AI, responsible automation is all about bringing your best self out, to work.
Agreed. I think where there is a human being, there will be some bias. Very difficult to eliminate it. good or bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are bad people, but it's just our upbringing and our exposure. So having more and more diversity of thought process is the best way to resolve it. We'll go on to our next question, and that's very similar to what an audience question has been asked. So I'll just club it up. The question here, and Parinita, I'll give it to you to start, is how are you guys rethinking your L&D, reskilling, upskilling programs, given the new normal as well as the digital needs, A? And the question that I have from the audience, which I'll plug in here, is how much of employee feedback do you actually take in to make these plans? So there's obviously business demand, but is there a conversation going on with employees to understand what their priorities are?
Okay. So maybe I'll start with the first part of your question, Sukanya. And, for us, the reality, the world is changing and everyone is. And where we are in the middle of our journey right now, we are transforming, and giving IKEA as example, transforming IKEA to be future ready. While we are gearing our co-workers to be future ready, we are also ensuring that we are strengthening our culture and values. And that's something that I think all three of us actually touched upon. And what we will never change is our commitment to our values, because that's something that really makes us unique, who we are. So our values and our culture is something that will continue to stay very close and integral to us. While we transform, we are empowering how the approach that we are taking is that we are keeping our co-workers at the heart of it and ensuring that people are our main assets. So the ambition is that we will allow our co-workers to spend more time, with the technology. It will actually allow the co-workers to be able to spend more time in more value-added activities, like engaging effectively with our customers or having an overall better co-worker experience by themselves. From a learning and development approach, in addition to our classical offering of retail, we are also enabling learnings to adapt to a digital mindset, which will then support and fuel our transformation. And the programs are, now, of course, offered digitally. That's also something that we realized, and what we had shared in the beginning. Thanks to COVID, I think one of the transitions which happened very quickly, completely, as Bhagirathi was also saying, echo that in IKEA as well. It literally happened overnight. So the digital learnings that we have managed, and the range of the topics now that we work with is not just on the retail knowledge, but we also look at reskilling our leaders to be able to lead the organization into this change, of course, delivering things online. And we are constantly then working with our co-workers of what is the module that has worked, didn't work, so that we can constantly evolve our leadership and competence offer for our co-workers, so that we can keep it relevant to be able to create the new retail of tomorrow. So of course, that dialogue always is there. At the end of the day, it is about our many co-workers who will then lead into the new future.
Avantika?
Yeah, I'm actually very proud of PepsiCo's core model towards talent management and how it's really holding us or it's helping us during this time where everything has changed, but the approach has really been around. Number one, we have a stated talent philosophy, which is to grow from within. And therefore, there is an onus on managers and employees to groom themselves for future opportunities. We have a very robust talent management process, which really articulates people's aspirations. What are their current capabilities? What is the gap? And there is coaching that a manager, gives to the employee on what are the areas they really need to develop on. So that's an ongoing process. It's got nothing to do with, the pandemic or anything like that. There are certain areas that emerge from that. When they are at scale, then we obviously have interventions in terms of capability to work with, employees. There is a whole suite of capability building that we do online through a platform. We have a tie-up with Degreed, and we have all kinds of capability building, 1 minute, 10 minute, 30 minute, whatever nuggets, and learning pathways where employees can really consume those nuggets in the way that they find most convenient. I think the other is on how we look at our career development model, which is very clearly articulated to have different elements of leadership capabilities. And we have a stated leadership competency model, which has various elements of what's relevant today, like agility, like flexibility, like change management, which one needs to really evolve as muscles if we want to succeed in the long term. The second is functional capability. So depending on what areas you're working in, how do you get really deep in those areas, depending on what level you are, etc. And that could be in any function. It could be in sales, it could be in manufacturing, it could be in technology. And then finally, if, we have an element of broadening, and broadening is really how do you gain a better, wider understanding, either geographically or across product categories or across areas that you're working in. And this could also come through working on transformation projects. And so we have a process of putting people on critical experience projects to equip them for the future. Now, to give you an example, if we are having a transformation project happening in technology, we will have people in a very planned fashion, cross-functionally, who go into that project to work on the project, but also to gain those skills which are relevant for their career growth. So capability building really is a combination of on the job as well as of training, which is more formally given. And again, it's a stated philosophy. We really try and make sure that our roles itself are meaty enough for employees to get prepared for future roles.
Thanks, Avantika. Bhagirathi, any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, so I would say some common points from what Avantika spoke about, learning management systems and learning experience systems, where you're not just learning, but you're also sharing what you're learning. So you can, others can look at what you've learned and probably see whether that's suitable for them, following each other and making sure that you're learning from it. But I think one critical part which is starting to make a lot of progress for us is what we call our flex projects, or where you can volunteer your time, let's say 15% of your time, or in a week, for example, on a project where somebody needs help, but not really a full-time employee, right? So if you have the time and you have the energy to do it, then you could do that. Because if you don't do it, people will go and moonlight elsewhere. During COVID times, we've seen that, right? So can that be used and channeled inside Unilever so that you can conserve the number of employees you will need during these times? Obviously, most people are not hiring now, but also give other, some of the other people who want experience. For example, somebody who's working in employee experience, can they work on the customer experience side and see what parallels they can bring in? How can they, elevate their own understanding of how experience works? So I think that's worked very well. But overall, I would say the whole learning is about a little more than getting people to work better in Unilever. We all know that today the way business works is that you may be in Unilever today and you don't know what will happen tomorrow anyways, right? So it's about learning for you to build your career with or without the company that you work in. It is looking at it as more of what skills do you need to build your career wherever you are. That's, I think, the biggest difference I'm seeing in the way we are looking at things.
That's really important. And companies which enable that also build the same level of, social equity from their employees, because the employees see an investment for the future. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, ladies. And, there's so much. I mean, talent, India for us, manpower has always been our strength, not just in numbers, but also in quality. We have evolved to become the tech, using tech as a differentiator in giving our, the talent an edge. And we hope to do so, continue. And organizations like yours, where, we are really thinking through the investment in talent, helps build that social capital for not just for individuals, but for the country. So thank you so much, and looking forward to taking these conversations. We'll have more questions that we'll share with all of you offline, but in the interest of time, I would really again like to thank all of you for being here. Appreciate it.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, audience, and over to you, Kritika.
Thank you, Sukanya. That was a wonderful, wonderful session. And thank you to Avantika, Bhagirathi, Sukanya, thank you so much for moderating this phenomenally well. And now moving on to our next session, we will start with our we've handpicked startups to come and present some of their solutions today. And I'd first like Amit from Assess Hub. Can we play the video for Assess Hub, please? And post which we will have Amit take a few questions.
These predict an individual's success on the role even before they make a hiring or an employee development decision. Our assessment platform is accurately able to predict how somebody will perform in future before you make a talent decision. We've been into this business for 5 years now. Today, we work with over 100 companies. We've assessed over 1 million people. And I'm happy to share that out of that 100, we work with almost 20 large retail brands. So if you walk into a mall, almost 50% of organized retail, they more or less use our assessment platform. And our ability to accurately predict future performance is to the tune of almost over 85%. There are 3 core parts to our offering. First is the assessment science. That's the the collection of tools that enables accurate evaluation. So with respect to retail, we specifically have tests across levels for different formats, like large store formats or small store formats like shop in shop or franchisee-owned, franchisee operated outlets for, let's say, a mass market brand or a niche market brand. There are specific ready-to-use tests to do the right evaluation. The second is the technology platform that enables assessment at scale without any human intervention whatsoever. So today you could run the entire assessment, in a completely proctored, cheat-proof and completely AI-driven environment where nobody from the company's end is even involved. The third is our predictive analytics capability, which basically is our own proprietary algorithm, which runs a lot of other hands within the organization. The entire process can be done using an audio and a video evaluation along with the standard MCQ test. I'll quickly show you a quick point. So there is a complete AI-driven thing that does the sentiment analysis. And here, the moment you press start, it'll just record. So I'm happy to work in this organization because it gives me a lot of opportunities to work with. I like working in retail sector because I like working with people and I like working with customers. So whatever I say in tens of regional languages within the country can be evaluated in real time, and the scoring can be done in real time. This is where you get this kind of a report where we use audio and video. We've worked with a lot of customers, largely across all the major retail players like Reliance. We work within Reliance Retail. We work with 7 to 8 brands. Within Urban Lifestyle brands, we work with almost all 13 to 14 brands. Likewise, we have decent exposure right from clothing to electronics to digital to home, all aspects of retail. We've also had the opportunity to work with the retail sector, skill council and government projects. So I'd be happy to add as an impact to the customer. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hi, Amit. You're able to hear me, right?
Yes, Kritika.
Yeah. So, we've been very well aware of your product and, we've tracked you continuously. So, will be good for the audience as well here to know what your journey has been. Hi, Amit. You're able to hear me, right? What your journey has been like and, where really are you? And could you just throw some light on your customers and how the last 8 months has been for you?
Sure. So specifically with the retail sector, we almost work with 15 to 20 retail brands. And there has been a significant change in terms of two aspects, both in hiring as well as learning and development of employees. So initially, everybody thought that this COVID period would kind of just phase out. And so they just wanted to engage current employees while the stores are not there open and all of that. So they did some online learning program which we ran over our LMS. So we created a completely like a shadow training application, so one can consume bite-sized learning, give an assessment on it, identify the weak areas, go back to practicing just the weak areas, and then assessing again, and thereby plugging that gap. But as time has progressed, what has happened is that, and as it became the new normal, we now even for hiring for retail brands today, we are able to they're doing just the backfill, but everything is being done completely online using a pure video and the assessment, and without any human intervention. So companies are just now investing time when they're already willing to make a decision on an employee. So all of it is a largely data driven and analytics driven.
Okay, excellent. The two solutions which are pretty much like a follow-up to the question I kind of asked you, saying what kind of changes did you make internally or in your solution in order to adapt to the pandemic? And three people have asked the same question.
Yep. So the biggest change that we had to quickly move was to make sure that the entire process happens digitally, which earlier used to happen in parts with a lot of intervention in between. So whether it's a trainer intervention or a hiring manager intervention, that we had to very quickly. So we had to, in a way, fundamentally change the way the product operates from a process perspective. The assessment remains the same, but had we not done it, we would have not been able to serve the customers.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. We'll get into
Sure.
polling for you now.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Vedant Patoy.
Hi, this is Ayush Deva, and we're the founders of Capybara, an HR platform that will allow the IT industry to save costs, discover talent in new and exciting ways, and improve their company's brand image.
The economic slowdown due to COVID-19 has affected different IT companies very differently, resulting in some companies expanding and hiring, whereas others lay people off as they struggle to maintain profitability. All of the parties in this process, however, face certain inefficiencies or problems. The company retrenching its employees has to bear the cost of retrenchment, as well as the massive impact on its brand image. The hiring company wants to hire people quickly and cheaply, but struggles to do so due to the enormous number of applications. And finally, employees who are being retrenched, including some truly valuable employees, face massive physical and mental stress. And these are the problems we hope to solve using our platform. Currently, after retrenchment, people apply to hiring companies through third-party sources, going through multiple application processes, which makes the process more complicated and inefficient. What we propose with Capybara is creating direct connections between companies retrenching people and companies hiring people with similar skills and training.
So how exactly does our platform work? Making a post about upcoming retrenchments on our platform is incredibly easy, requiring only basic information such as the job title, a few primary skills, and the number of employees. These posts are completely anonymous and can be easily modified or deleted. Posts about hiring new employees can also be made in a similar manner. Your posts are instantly available to our partner companies to view and to connect with you at a click of a button.
Okay, let's take a quick look at the value proposition for the releasing company. There is a reduced cost of retrenchment. The brand image and employee relations for the company will definitely improve. And lastly, Capybara allows for a more positive and transitive experience for their employees. Now for the hiring company, we see that they have direct access to trained and experienced professionals through our platform. Their hiring times and costs will be greatly cut down, and they can generate revenue very quickly with these new positions. Now, finally, for the employees, they can avoid the unpredictable and tedious job market. They gain an endorsement from their previous company regarding their skills and performance, but perhaps most importantly, they're treated as a valuable employee. As you can see, Capybara provides value to all of the parties involved in this process and is a step in the right direction for HR and IT. Please sign up your company at www.capybara.in or contact us for more information at info@capybara.in. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Ayush. I sound
Hello.
the voice from God knows where, from the backstage. But yeah, great to have you with us. And, quick highlight about, how the pandemic has, what kind of changes have you had to make, to suit this situation?
Well, to be honest, our product was actually born out of the pandemic.
Right.
Because the pandemic actually made certain changes to the HR industry and the IT industry that necessitated such a product that would allow us to deal with this new normal where people are being retrenched due to lost projects, people are being retrenched due to different changes in the situations very rapidly, very quickly. There are changes that require quick hires, quick retrenchments. It's a very rapidly changing situation. That is why such a product we thought that such a product was going to work very well. And that is how we came up with the idea, and that is why we quickly went through developing the product, and that's why we're able to say confidently that this product is going to do very well in the HR industry.
Very nice, Aisha. Have you piloted your product already? Is there some details you could share with us on that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So our product is our first point of contact was the IT industry, right? So we're working with the TechM and HCL are the two big companies who are working with us right now. We already have HCL having posts on our platform, hiring from our platform. And so that's obviously a big name that's along with us right now. And TechM is also going to be on board in the next couple of weeks. And our next point of contact was definitely the retail industry, because we know that the number of people in tech in the retail industry is increasing every day. And the demand for tech specialists in the retail industry is also very high. And so definitely that was our next point of contact. And that's why this event is so important to us. And I definitely hope to make some connections here.
I have another question for you. Is there something that you want to talk about? How do you address the privacy concerns that employees may have if the employer is sharing their details on your platform?
I understand. So our entire platform is based around the fact that an employer has complete control over what information they will share. And that information, whatever information they're sharing, they will first get the permission from the employee to share that information. Now, the employee obviously gets massive help from the platform. And that's why we believe that's massive incentive for them to allow them to share this information. At the same time, there are no personal details that will be shared over the platform. So the employee's information will be completely anonymous until the point that there's some actual interest from a company. And that's when the employee gets more value out of the platform. And that's when his or her information will actually be shared.
Great, Ayush. Thank you so much. We'll go to the polls now.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate this.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lalit Mathur, and I am co-founder of DCS, which is a cloud-based SaaS platform for secure data sharing. We have developed India's first virtual data room platform. Yes, most of you will be wondering what is virtual data room. Virtual data room is a secure platform which is mostly used in M&A and fundraising processes, wherein the company uploads its confidential data in the data room and give permission-based access to third parties to view or download the data. Right now, the competition in India is from foreign companies, mostly US-based. We are made in India, providing local support to our customers and hosting data of the users in India. And on the top of it, we are much more cost-effective than our competition. Our recent customer acquisition story is India's biggest retail sector deal, wherein Reliance has bought Future Group at a valuation of $3.6 billion. The full due diligence happened on DCRS VDR, with almost 500 users from top audit firms, top law firms, banks, investment bankers, and private equity firms. We are going strong, and down the line, we want to create D-Series as a global brand in the field of secure data sharing. Thanks and take care.
Hi. The question that we have for you is, can you share a bit more about how your retail customer are using your solution? You're on mute.
So I just tell you the recent use case which we have done with the biggest Indian retail group, Future Group. So Future Group has taken our platform, and they, as we all know, that Future Group has been bought by Reliance fairly recently. So they have taken our platform for conducting the due diligence of the transaction. So companies like Reliance, and there are all the big fours, big top law firms, private equities, banks, investment bankers. They were onboarded on our platform, and they were reading the confidential data of Future Group to do the valuation and to finalize the transaction, or I would say acquisition of Future Group. So that's how our platform was used. And I see there are a lot of big names today here in this forum. I mean, and some of them were asking that how can we ensure that the employees is working or not. So we have in our platform such type of system wherein you can see what employee has seen, what file at what point of time, and how much time they have spent. So that can be one of the solution for them. So the idea, and I will request NASSCOM to connect me to all these big brands so that I can offer my solution to them, at least on a pilot basis. We are also working with companies like IndiaMart, Max Healthcare, providing them our secured content collaboration, I would say, data sharing solution. We came up with a virtual data room concept, which is totally new in India, although it's quite famous in foreign countries. Here we are.
Thank you, Lalit. Does the solution also provide analysis on the employee data?
Not at the moment. We are in the process of building analytics and putting an AI over it. But at the moment, it can provide you. I mean, it's a secure data secure data sharing solution. So, for example, nowadays everybody is at doing work from home. So you can actually map your employees, the machines they are logging in, the type of files they are doing, and the type of data they are sharing. You can even block their machines or block their access to different type of data.
Anything that you want to quickly talk about your product? 30 seconds.
It's a wonderful product. Use it and feel it and give your comments on it. And we are here to prepare DSER as a global brand in the field of secure data sharing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lalit. Can we have the poll, please?
Hello everyone, my name is Deepak, co-founder and CEO of Habitate.io. It is so nice to be here presenting to you my two solutions, Okezo.io and Habitate.io, that's going to help you supercharge your business. So what's the basic mechanics of any business? The first step would be understanding what your customers actually want. And the second step would be passing on this information to your employees without any loss of data. And then the third step would be motivating your team to get it done. So how do we do that? What we did is we built a platform, Habitate, that's going to plug onto your website, your web store so easily and help you collect these stories from your customers. An open space where your customers can engage in conversations not just between them and you, but on a larger scale with other customers of yours too. Wait, that's more. Actually, they can have conversation with your employees too. So both your PAS, your internal PAR, your workforce, and your external PAR, your customers, are going to engage in this conversation, ask each other questions, share feedback, have this open communication between them. And what we get out of this is through this conversation, if we listen closer to them and analyze, we're going to understand so much emotional part of our customers, of your customers. What is it that they actually like and dislike about you? So what happens once we know this? We need to translate them to a list of tasks need to be done. So we built Orcazo.io for that. So you list out these tasks to be done, invite your teammates, and then we gamify it, make it look like sports, and then motivate your team to get it done. So it's very simple. We got two solutions for you. Habitate handling the front end, helping you understand what your customer actually wants, and then Orcazo translating it into work and then helping you get it done. So are you ready to try it at house? Yes. You don't really gonna lose anything by giving us a try, but you might end up having everything by giving us a shot. Thank you for listening to the demo presentation. This is Deepak Kumar, co-founder and CEO of Orcazo.io and Habitate.io.
Hi, Deepak.
Hi, Kritika. It's nice to be here.
Being with us. So, a quick, can you share more about a case study that you might have done with one of your clients? Anything that you'd like to specifically highlight?
So what we have done is many businesses are today becoming very customer obsessive, trying to understand more about them and working exactly what the customer actually wants. So we worked with one such organization, an edutech company, and grew their customer base from 0 to 10,000. That was our first journey to begin with. And now what we're trying to do is we are translating that success. We are trying to replicate the success to every other brand that we work with as well.
Okay, great. I'd like you to just kind of quickly highlight 4 or 5 key points about your product and solution so that we can, get a quick understanding of it from your perspective.
Right. So one is it is very necessary to build things that people actually want. So where we come on pitch in with a product where you can just customer facing, where you can ask both your employees and customers to be part of it and engage in knowledge sharing discussions, and then translate these discussions into insights. And then these insights gets converted into tasks. Then you get these tasks done by gamification, by providing recognition to the employees to do that.
Okay. There's a question on saying, where are you from a funding or revenue perspective now? Just very broadly, you can answer that.
So we are actually angel funded actually. And then in terms of revenue, we are on 4K digit MRR.
I also have another question before we go into polling, which says, do you see more use cases related to employee engagement that can be catered through your solution?
Yes, actually, we are trying to harness the power of both internal as well as the external community of company. External being the customer and internal being the employees. And we're trying to merge both of this power into one single platform and gain value out of it.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Deepak. With that, we'll go into your poll.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Manish from Star, and we are Shopify for hotels. Last year, the airline industry was able to earn $110 billion just selling ancillary services, and hotel industry just earned a fraction of that. For too long, hotel industry has been so much focused on selling rooms that maybe they didn't realize that a lot of revenue can be generated selling ancillaries. Using our staff solution, each hotel would be having an online e-commerce store with which they will be able to sell any ancillary services, whether it's F&B, merchandise, or day pass, or events, or tour, all within less than 10 minutes and without selling out hundreds and thousands of dollars. Here is an example of our solution being used to sell different services. Here is a merchandise, and this is integrated with WhatsApp and personalized AI guest recommendation. In the last 2 months alone, we have onboarded more than 7,000 rooms. And with this number alone, we will be able to hit 1 million user interaction in the next 1 year. Our hotel customers are based in South Asia, as well as in Singapore, Malaysia, and India. A notable customer of ours is Ginger Hotel, which is part of the Tata Group. They are using our system across all the properties in India. So let us help you rebound and create this new revenue stream. Thank you. Please enjoy the product video.
Karam, last 30 seconds, what do you want to highlight about your product?
Yeah. So what we're looking for is like the big player, Tata and Reliance, they're building the super app. We believe that we will be able to contribute to this ecosystem.
Excellent. Yeah. Can we go into polling, please? So this has been a brilliant 2 hours, and I think we met some phenomenal startups, some phenomenal speakers, some great conversation on talent and technology and what the future for HR looks like in the retail tech. I think extremely relevant conversation with the times that we've gone through and the times that we're yet to see and what we are in currently. With that, I would like to thank the startups. I'd like to thank the teams that have worked behind this to make this happen. And, I'd like to definitely thank all the startups who so patiently come and demo their products and talk to us, and of course to all the panelists. Before I sign off, look forward to all of you signing in tomorrow at 4 o'clock for a great discussion with Devjani and Kunal on e-commerce trends, what's next, followed by yet another phenomenal panel tomorrow, and another list of 6 excellent startups for all of you to meet. So look forward to all of you signing in at 4 o'clock tomorrow for another set of good conversations. Till then, thank you everybody and see you all tomorrow.